Turning now to a brand new case that we are following out of Florida, an officer's affair murder case for defendant Ellie Shea. He is a former sergeant who is charged with killing his wife, a lieutenant, and trying to cover up the murder as a suicide. Victim Ellie Shea was found dead from a gunshot wound. This was back in October of 2024. Both had worked for the sheriff's office, but Anthony resigned due to an internal affairs investigation. The investigation centered around an intimate relationship he had while on duty. Earlier this week, Ellie Shea had a bond hearing, and we got to hear from the lead investigator on that case. Why don't we go ahead and listen to that?
How did law enforcement first become involved in this case?
The sheriff's office received a 911 phone call on October 14th, 2024 at 2:12 p.m.
Who placed that call?
Ellie Shea.
Where did that call originate from?
From their residence.
Have you had an opportunity to review that 911 call?
Yes.
Can you give the court a sense of the audio in that particular 911 call?
It's a male caller who's advising that his wife is shot.
Is there an echo that sort of persists throughout the call?
Yes.
Are you still able to hear what is said between the 911 operator and the defendant, Ellie Shea?
Yes.
Orange County deputies responded to the scene?
Yes.
Approximately what time did they arrive?
They arrived at 2:18 p.m.
I'm going to approach to retrieve what's marked as E and F. If those are marked. Okay, we'll start with A, B, and C. By agreement between the state of Florida and the defense, the state would seek to move into evidence what has been marked as States A for identification purposes. This is Detective Gilberti's investigative report that was authored on November 4th, 2024.
No objection, Your Honor, pursuant to what we talked about just a moment ago.
Thank you. It will be offered, or it received as State's Exhibit 1 for this hearing only.
The state would next seek to admit what has been marked as States B for identification purposes, which is Detective Gilberti's supplemental investigative report that was authored on March 19th, 2025.
Same caveat, Mr. O'Mara.
Yes, again, I'm not going to stand up each time. If I can just have that as a standing concern, then I'll just let Mr. Wiggins do what we've already agreed to do.
All right, thank you. Then B will be received in evidence as State's Exhibit 2 for this hearing only.
So I want to talk to you about two deputies that responded. The first deputy I want to discuss is a Deputy Matthew Cavalcante. Did you have an opportunity to review Deputy Cavalcante's body-worn camera footage?
I did.
Just briefly, can you kind of give a summary of what occurs, very briefly, in the body-worn camera footage?
So he seems to take the first statement or account of what occurred from Ellie Shea. Also during the video, you can see Ellie Shea walking around. He appears to have blood on his hands, on his arms, on his shirt. He appears to be looking at his hands a couple times throughout the video.
Is the blood that you saw within that particular body-worn camera recording very visible?
Yes.
Now I want to talk to you about a Sergeant Shelley Pomerleau. When did she arrive in relation to Deputy Cavalcante?
They all arrived about the same time.
Where does she go within the house, and what does she encounter? What's her role during this initial response?
So she goes upstairs to where the victim was located. She makes contact with Ellie Shea, who's providing CPR at that time.
And you reviewed her body cam as well?
Yes.
And at this time, the state would seek to move into evidence what has been marked as States E, which is the body-worn camera recording of Deputy Cavalcante.
Yes, Your Honor.
It will be admitted as Exhibit, I guess it's 3 for this, unless you want to go in order.
It can be 3, Your Honor.
All right, it'll be 3 for purposes of this hearing only.
The state would then seek to move into evidence what has been marked as State's F for identification purposes, which is the state's is the copy of Sergeant Palmer Lou's body-worn camera recording. Palmer Lou is spelled P-O-N-E-R-L.
All right, it will be received as State's Exhibit 4 for this hearing.
Detective Gilberti, I want to talk to you about some of the observations you made from your review of Sergeant Palmer Lou's body-worn camera recording. You mentioned the CPR that the defendant was conducting when she enters the room. Where is the decedent, Ellie Shea, whenever she enters the room?
She is on the floor at the foot of the bed.
Did you observe any other objects in the vicinity of both the defendant and Ms. Shea during this initial encounter that is depicted on the body cam?
Yes, there's a cell phone at the foot of the bed, and there's a firearm on the bed.
Did the defendant make any statements about the CPR that he was performing that were notable to you?
He did not want to stop. He stated that he thought he had a pulse while providing CPR.
In the immediate proximity of the defendant, were there 2 objects that you would you observe and eventually collect that were sort of visible?
The cell phone and the firearm?
Whose cell phone was visible in that?
So Anthony Shea's cell phone was visible. It was on the foot of the bed.
You mentioned that Sergeant Palmer Lou has this initial encounter with the defendant. Does she travel downstairs and speak to him about sort of what is happening in this recording?
Yes, so the fire department takes over CPR. They have Anthony Shea go downstairs. Shelley goes down with Anthony Shea, and they discuss, he provides what occurred.
At some point in her recording, does she leave from the defendant's proximity and kind of go back upstairs for a period of time?
Yes,
She returned back downstairs.
yes.
Do you see a table that's flipped on the ground that had not previously been flipped on the ground?
Yes, so kind of in between the living room and the kitchen, there was a small table that when she came back downstairs, the table was now upside down.
Approximately what time did you arrive on scene?
I arrived at 3:07 p.m.
Is your arrival actually captured on the body-worn camera of Sergeant Palmer Lou?
Yes, it is.
Describe sort of what you observe initially upon entry into the residence.
So when I enter the residence, Anthony Shea is sitting in that same area of that table in between the living room and the kitchen. He's sitting, and there's a couple deputies around him.
What do you ask the defendant to do?
So we asked Anthony Shea to come outside to conduct an interview.
And does he agree?
Yes, he does.
Going to approach and retrieve what is marked as State's G for identification purposes and seek to move what's marked as G into evidence as the audio recordings of 2 interviews conducted with the defendant on October 14th.
Same caveat, Your Honor.
Thank you. It will be received as State's Exhibit 5 for this hearing.
What do you learn from that first interview from the defendant concerning circumstances leading up to Ellie's death?
So I learned that Anthony Shea and Ellie Shea had been having relationship troubles due that he had been caught cheating, and they were having a tough time with their relationship. The night before this happened, they went to church. There was an argument at church which continued when they got home. So they argued till about 3 in the morning. After the argument, they had intercourse, then they went to sleep. When they woke up in the morning, Ellie Shea was feeling drained from the emotional aspect of the argument, so she called out sick from work. And according to Anthony Shea, she stayed in bed all day, not feeling well.
What did he tell you about the circumstances of his departure from the residence?
So he described that Ellie asked him for some space. She needed some time alone and to take the children out to the store to get some groceries, take the girls to get some cookies. So that was his plan.
Did he tell you that upon discovering Miss Shea that he immediately started performing CPR?
He did.
And was that also what he had communicated in the 911 call recording?
Yes.
After concluding your interview with the defendant, what did you do next?
Then I conducted a walkthrough of the crime scene. This occurred in a bedroom on the second floor. It's the master bedroom. And when you walk into the bedroom, the bed is set far back, in the back corner. I observed blood on the floor at the base of the bed. Saw the cell phone belonging to Anthony Shea, the firearm on the bed, and a cell phone belonging to Ellie Shea was located. That was also on the bed.
Did a member of the crime scene unit respond to the scene and document the area that you just discussed?
Yes.
And took photos?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to move into evidence what has been marked as State's I for identification purposes.
Same caveat, Your Honor.
All right, it will be admitted as State's Exhibit 6.
Why don't we go ahead and bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Tamburino just to discuss what we've been seeing so far. Joe, this is a new case that we're beginning to follow out of Florida. Another sad situation here. The officer accused of killing his wife, staging it like a suicide. What are your thoughts as we listen to this hearing? This was a taped hearing that we had, I believe it was yesterday, but we're just kind of replaying it now because this is going to be our next big trial we're covering here at Court TV. What are your takeaways?
Well, what they're trying to do here is they're showing about this recording that was accidentally done, supposedly, by the defendant. I think what you're going to hear throughout this case and throughout the trial is the following, that supposedly when the defendant found his wife's body, according to the state, he took her phone and was doing some texting to make it look like, perhaps she was still alive and then committed suicide. However, he inadvertently, while he was on the phone, according to what the state is arguing, hit a recording button. And I believe what the evidence is going to show is that for approximately 50 minutes, there was an audio recording of what's going on. And you hear him milling about. The one thing you don't hear is a gunshot. So this recording is going to be very, very crucial in the state's case, in the prosecution in this case, and it's extremely damaging to the defense.
And Joe, we've seen this before in some cases we've covered here at Court TV. At first, the circumstances may not be clear, then they start to follow the digital evidence investigators do, and then you see situations like this. We've covered cases before where someone claims someone just died naturally or suicide, and then you find out that that very person that claimed that actually was using their phone afterwards to text to make it appear like something happened that didn't.
Well, you're absolutely right. We've covered so many of these cases. You would think that people who are deciding to commit murder or some heinous act like that would learn from history. If there's a digital footprint everywhere. If someone goes on their laptop and searches what are, toxins that could be used to kill someone, that's going to be found. If someone is walking around with their cell phone, even on, you're going to get a location on that, whether it's through towers or you're clicking on to someone's internet as you're walking by a building or a residence. The digital footprint is everywhere. So it boggles one's mind to continue to see people try this when they should know just basically from watching TV, the media, court TV, that, you're going to get caught.
Yeah, Joe, exactly. All right, coming up, we're going to see some crime scene photos, including the defendant's cell phone in the officer's affair murder case. That's when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.
Now,
welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Kelly Craft in for Julie Grant. We are going back to Florida for the best moments of a bond hearing from an officer's affair murder case. Former Orange County Sheriff's Deputy Anthony Shea is accused of murdering his wife, Ellie Shea. This took place last October. He is also charged with trying to stage his wife's death as a suicide inside their Orlando home. Now, according to court documents, Anthony Shea resigned from the force after he had an affair while on duty. The defendant has been in jail without bond for nearly 1 year, and the lead detective is now testifying about the defendant's cell phone. So why don't we go ahead and get you back in there?
Whose phone is this?
This is Ellie Shea's phone.
You see this screen when you have a chance to flip the phone over. Do you immediately recognize this audio message that's in the send bar as just that, an audio message that has yet to been sent to the defendant?
Yes.
What steps did you take on scene to try to preserve this message?
So I took my agency phone and recorded to Axon. I put that phone next to her phone, hit play on her phone, and created an audio recording as a backup copy of the recording.
Were you able to listen to the recording at that point in time?
I started to listen to it. The problem is it was very difficult to hear. You almost had to have isolated headphones on. And again, I was listening to a copy of a copy, so it needed some, like a quiet space to be able to listen to.
And you didn't have a quiet space at that time?
Not at that time, no.
After your entry or re-entry into the scene and making the observations that you made, did you conduct a second interview with the defendant?
Yes, we did.
During that interview, did he provide some additional facts that he had not provided in the first interview?
Yes.
Did you ask him where Ellie was when he first encountered her?
Yes.
Where did he describe encountering Ms. Shea?
She was on her side of the bed, which was the side closest to the window. She was on her back, but kind of to her side, and her head was on the headboard.
Did he tell you what he did upon finding her?
He pulled her to the floor and started CPR.
Did you ask some follow-up questions about the firearm during this interview?
Yes.
And talk to the court about how the story that you got in the second interview was a bit different than the story you got in the first interview.
So initially, Anthony Shea stated he did not touch the firearm. During the second interview, he stated that he moved the firearm in order to pull her off of the bed. And he said he tossed it on the bed somewhere, but didn't know where he tossed it.
Were both Ellie's phone and the defendant's phone collected and provided to the digital forensics unit?
Yes, they were.
Was an extraction obtained from both of those devices?
Yes.
Did you review the contents of that extraction?
I did.
In the two interviews that you had an opportunity to conduct with the defendant, did he give you some locations and times that he said that he was at?
Yes.
Did you seek out any surveillance footage to try to corroborate his account?
Yes. So Anthony Shea described that he went to Publix in order to get groceries, as discussed with Ellie before he left. He described the location of the Publix, which was nearby the residence. So we went to Publix and got surveillance video, which captured him and his children entering the business.
Was the Shea residence equipped with a surveillance camera that sort of captured the front yard and driveway area?
Yes, it was.
And were you able to recover footage from that device?
Yes.
Were you also able to recover data from a smart lock that was on the front door?
Yes.
And what kind of data was able to be recovered from the smart lock?
So the smart lock it logged when the door was open and closed. And the front door to the residence.
From these sources, the cell phone extractions, the surveillance footage, and this smart lock, was a timeline created that gave a chronological account of the events that could be established from these sources of evidence?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to move into evidence what has been marked as State's L for identification purposes.
State cell will be admitted as Exhibit 7 for purposes of this hearing.
Actually, I do have some voir dire of the witness, if I might, before. This is, I did get this yesterday.
Okay.
But I do have a couple of questions, if I might.
You may.
If I may, Your Honor, I moved it in at that point because I believed that there was an agreement, so I'll ask some additional questions, and then there may or may not still be voir dire.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, sir.
Detective Gilberti, with permission from the court, I'll approach with State's L. Detective Gilberti, this is a two-page composite exhibit. Will you flip through both pages for me? Do you recognize those two pages?
I do.
And do you recognize those two pages in the timeline that is laid out from those two pages to be derived from data points?
Coming up, we're going to learn more about the relationship between the defendant and his wife and the alleged fight they had the night before she was found murdered. We'll be right back.
Tonight. We're live from Denver for CrimeCon 2025. See what special guests join us at the world's biggest true crime event. Closing arguments live from CrimeCon tonight, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Brian Walsh, accused of murdering his wife, Anna.
She wrote a children's book about her husband's death. Now she's accused of killing him.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Back now to Orange County, Florida, where a former sheriff's deputy is seeking bond. Anthony Shea is accused of killing his wife, who was also an Orange County sheriff's deputy. Lieutenant Ellie Shea was found dead inside the master bedroom of their Orlando home last year. Anthony Shea is also accused of using his wife's cell phone to create an alibi and then staging the scene as a suicide. Let's go back into the courtroom now. The lead detective is testifying about the defendant's cell phone records.
Did you personally had an opportunity to review the defendant's extraction?
Yes.
And did you personally also have an opportunity to see the corresponding data points within the extraction that appear within the timeline?
Yes.
Same question for Ellie's phone. You reviewed that extraction?
Yes.
And the sort of data points and the times that are associated with Ellie's phone that appear within this timeline, you saw within the extraction as well.
Yes.
The smart lock data, where did that smart lock data actually come from? Like, where do we find that?
That was from the,
Let me ask it a better way. Was the smart lock data also on one of the phones?
yes,
Okay. And so the smart lock data that is included within this particular timeline is also derived from the extraction that you were.
yes,
And it's a fair and accurate depiction of all that data?
yes.
I have no further questions in this case.
Any voir dire?
I do, yes, if I might, Your Honor.
You may.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
I'm just curious because it seems as though this was created because you made the decision that my client, Anthony Shea, murdered his wife, correct?
Based
That was
on,
the premise that you had, correct?
based on the investigation.
Well, no, based on when you say things like Anthony Shea, 1:30:59, Anthony Shea sent a message to Alita's cell phone. What forensic evidence do you have that Mr. Shea did any of that?
Your Honor, I'm just going to object to this question within the voir dire because it does not relate to the admissibility of this particular exhibit, especially in the context of an Arthur hearing where the rules of evidence essentially do not apply.
I understand the state's concern, but if what he's entering into is nothing but supposition and opinion of a witness unrelated to forensic evidence, then I would object because that's exactly what it is and nothing more. He's making suppositions that have no forensic support, and I don't think that that makes it should be admitted before the court because of that concern.
I'm going to sustain the objection, and I will note your objection to the exhibit. But it's certainly fair game for cross-examination.
Okay. Oh, you sustained the state's objection?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, gotcha. Okay, thanks then. Nothing, if I might, just a couple of more questions. And throughout this timeline that you created, there are a number of entries that you made the decision that Mr. Shea did something without any forensic evidence to support.
Objection, Your Honor, same objection.
Sustained.
I'll do it at once, thanks.
All right. And that exhibit will be admitted as State's Exhibit 7 over objection.
Publishing what's in evidence is State's 7. We're going to start at the top of page 1, but before we do, I want to talk about a data point that does not appear on this sort of timeline presentation. You had made reference to the defendant telling you about this terrible argument that had occurred the night before and that he was up till 3 in the morning. Did you find any surveillance footage that was of note around that time?
Yes.
What did you find?
There was video that captured him exiting the residence, going towards the car,
At what time?
approximately 3 o'clock.
So he's out in his vehicle at 3 in the morning
Yes.
on the 14th.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about this timeline. And I want to begin with this first entry, 0729. Ellie Shea contacted Captain Wright and called out sick from work. Who is Captain Wright?
That's her supervisor.
Within the PSD unit?
Yes. So she works for the Sheriff's Office in the Professional Standards Division. Captain Tori Wright is the captain over the Professional Standards Division.
As we move through this timeline, 80653, so that would be 80653.
Let's go ahead and bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Tamburino to discuss what we have been seeing so far. Defense counsel getting up there, Joe, making some comments, talking about what the lead investigator was talking about here. What do you think? Good strategy there?
No, not really. I mean, yes, he had to object because at this hearing, which is a very preliminary hearing, he just wanted to show whether it's for the public's view or to highlight it for the judge or his own client, this whole thing about no forensic evidence. Well, it really doesn't matter much in this case. They've got a ton of great evidence from the decedent's cell phone. There's no doubt about that. This 15-minute recording that the defendant presumably, did accidentally start it. Again, it goes back to what you and I have talked about before. The whole situation of digital evidence, of working with electronics, it keeps coming up in all the trials that we have. And the way it keeps coming up is it is used primarily, from what I see, 90% of the time, against the defendant. And that's exactly what's happening here with Mr. Shea.
Yeah, if we didn't have that in a lot of the cases, when you're prosecuting a case, and if investigators didn't have that, I mean, we'd be in a much different situation than we have. And years ago, Joe, they didn't have that kind of evidence. Investigators had to really dig and put together a really solid case based on a lot of circumstantial evidence.
You're absolutely right. And look at some of the other, like in this case, so many of these cases have other types of recordings. You just heard Detective Gilberti talk about the video from outside of the defendant's residence. I mean, so much of today's world is captured on video because of doorbell videos, neighborhood watch videos, all of these things.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much. Coming up, was it a staged suicide? More from an officer's affair murder case of Anthony Shea. You're watching Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice. We're coming back.
Know the difference.
Welcome back. Turning now to that brand new case that we are following out of Florida. An officer's affair murder case for defendant Anthony Shea. He is a former sergeant who is charged with killing his wife, a lieutenant, and then trying to cover up the murder as a suicide. Victim Ellie Shea was found dead from a gunshot wound back in October of 2024. Both had worked for the sheriff's office, but Anthony resigned due to an internal affairs investigation. The investigation centered around an intimate relationship that he had while on duty. Earlier this week, Anthony Shea had a bond hearing, and we did get a chance to hear from the lead investigator on that case. Let's take a listen to more of the terrible argument that they're talking about here, alleged terrible argument possibly between the defendant and the victim.
Next message, outgoing message that's referenced is to a Kelly de Guzman. Who is Kelly de Guzman in relationship to Ms. Shea?
She's a friend. She also works for the sheriff's office in a field as a field service officer.
And we see some additional communication from Ms. Shea to the defendant at 10 in the morning in this next entry. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, we'll just move to 12:22 through 12:24. Anthony makes note, list Brussels sprouts, frozen or fresh junk food ice cream. Where was this data derived from?
From Anthony Shea's phone in the Notes app.
And that was an iPhone?
Yes.
Now, who is Tiffany Thompson Disler that is referenced in the 12:41:43 second message?
She's a friend, and then she's also an attorney that was helping Ellie with divorce proceedings.
Now, I want to move to the entry at 12:46 and 41 seconds. Ellie Shea conducted an internet search. I'm a cop and my husband sexually assaulted me. Where was that derived from?
That was from Ellie Shea's cell phone, her iPhone, in her search history, her internet search history.
We see at 12:50 and 1:20 entries that reference Anthony Shea walking 3 flights of stairs. Where is that data derived from?
That is derived from his cell phone.
It's sort of the activity log within his cell phone.
Yes.
And now I'll move to 1:29:48. Ellie Shea's cell phone display turns on. Is that once again derived from her cell phone extraction?
Yes.
And a little bit more than a minute later, the entry reads, Anthony Shea sent a message from Ellie Shea's cell phone to his cell phone. Have we seen that message in an image from the CSI photos?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next entry is Anthony Shea, then 3 seconds later, inadvertently activated the audio recorder on Ellie Shea's cell phone. I now want to talk to you about first what's in evidence as, or has been marked as State's Exhibit J, which is the audio message that was recovered through the forensic extraction of Ms. Shea's phone.
Same caveat, I assume.
Yes, and an additional one. For today's purposes, I think it is probably admissible, but it has been enhanced. We do not know how. We do not know how degraded it might have been, because we don't have any of the background on the enhancement. So if that concern as well, but again, I think for today's purposes, as long as that objection is also maintained and the court considers that concern, I think with the relaxed evidentiary codes for author hearings and pretrial hearings, it would be admissible.
If I may just offer a point of clarification, State's J is the raw file that was extracted from the phone with no enhancements. That was the file that was provided to the court, but the court was unable to review. The state has separately created an exhibit, which is State's K, which includes the enhanced version of that same file, and the state will seek to move those exhibits in separately for the court's consideration.
And I'll wait on my objection. I just saw that J included, at least in the list given to me by the state, included the enhanced, but I now understand that he separated them out for our purposes.
J will be admitted as State's Exhibit 8 for this hearing.
I thought we got transcribed.
Publishing what's in evidence is State's Exhibit 8.
Do you intend to play the entire 50-plus minutes?
I do not, Your Honor. I intend to play about 1 minute and 7 seconds in the start and a few minutes on the back end.
Okay, thank you.
So before I publish what's in evidence as State's 8, how long is this recording?
54 minutes and 17 seconds.
Is it a continuous recording from when the recording starts to when it reaches that 54-minute and 17-second mark?
Yes.
When did you first have an opportunity to actually be in a quiet place and review the extracted version of this recording?
It was the following day.
During that review, were you able to take more away from this recording than you were when you reviewed the kind of recording of a recording?
Yes.
We'll publish what's in evidence. Detective Gilberti.
All right, they're playing something there in court, but we really can't hear the audio. So why don't we bring in criminal defense attorney Josh Shiver, who is joining us this morning. Josh, great to see you on this Friday. Haven't seen you in a while. Good morning.
I was going to say, it's so great to see you. And wow, what a week it's been.
Yeah.
This is good, gripping stuff for a Friday morning, though. This is a really serious case for those folks familiar with what's going on.
Yeah.
Police on police violence.
It is, Josh. Yeah, hard to follow the Donna Adelson verdict, but you know, we jump into new cases here at Court TV all the time when one ends, and then now we're looking at this case in Florida. And, you know, we see these cases a lot. People will claim, okay, they committed suicide, but yet we start to find out the evidence begins to come in and you find out actually there's more to the story here. So what are your takeaways from this one?
Absolutely, and you're right. It's a story that's familiar to us because it happens with enough regularity that we've seen it. And the general 10,000 foot step back, forest for the trees is some incident happened and violence ensued. That violence involved a firearm, which is one of the big parts of the discussion about firearms access and the Second Amendment. Is we all understand that firearms are safe when they're not being used, but that moment of use, that availability, that's a big focus for public health and the political spectrum in dealing with how do we deal with otherwise wonderful people who are having that bad moment and the freely available ultra-hazardous instrumentality, which is a firearm, as that's really where we are finding the focus of criminal justice and where we are failing as a country. Because rather than a non-deadly use of force, the firearm being available makes a death much more likely. And that's the state's theory here. The state's theory is that there was a disagreement that led to the murder of his estranged wife, a fellow officer, someone who is trained on self-defense, someone who can absolutely take care of herself. She was an exemplary officer with high marks, but there was a lot going on in the background with the investigation as to improper contact, some affairs. This is why the romantic issues involving these departments are so delicate, because officers are humans. They have feelings. They work in intense situations, and oftentimes we're going to see romance develop. When it falls apart, unfortunately, we're dealing with sophisticated defendants who know the criminal justice system. And what I believe the state's going to put forward is that a horrible incident happened and then the cover-up. And we've talked about this so many times, Kelly. The cover-up is so much worse than the crime, or admits the crime in so many ways, because it just doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're going to see in here. Very emotional, very sad. The death of an officer and the incarceration of another one is never something to celebrate.
Yeah, very sad situation. Josh, thank you so much. We're going to get in a break. Coming up, more testimony from the lead investigator in the Officers Affair murder trial of Anthony Shea. We'll be back.
Tonight, we're live from Denver for CrimeCon 2025. See what special guests join us at the world's biggest true crime event. Closing arguments, live from CrimeCon tonight, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Studies show that having lots of books at home is one of the best ways to help a child succeed in school and beyond.
That's why the Scripps Howard Fund started the If You Give a Child a Book campaign.
So please, if you could give a child a book today,
we would be so grateful.
This morning, we are tracking a few cases across the country. In Wisconsin, testimony resumes in the Kiss and Kill murder trial. This one is for Samantha Krebs. That starts at 9 a.m. Eastern. Also in Kentucky, Felicia Gross is back in court today for her arraignment. She is charged in the murder of her 10-year-old son, Jaden Spicer. Court there begins at 11 a.m. Eastern. Also in Tennessee, convicted killer Megan Boswell back in court today for a sentencing hearing. This is on her other counts. She was already sentenced to life in prison for her daughter Evelyn's murder back in February. Court there gets underway at 1:30 p.m. Right now, though, we're going back to Florida for the best moments of a bond hearing from an officer's affair murder case. Former Orange County Sheriff's Deputy Anthony Shea is accused of murdering his wife, Ellie Shea. This took place last October. He is also charged with trying to stage his wife's death as a suicide inside their Orlando home. Now, according to court documents, Anthony Shea resigned from the force after he had an affair while on duty. The defendant has been in jail without bond for nearly a year now, and the lead detective has been testifying about the defendant's timeline. Let's go back in.
Detective Gilberti, both in the original file and the enhanced file, did you hear a sound sort of at the very beginning of the recording that you thought you may have recognized?
Yes.
What did you do in order to try to confirm or refute that suspicion?
So there's some sort of a metallic clicking noise in the beginning, and I believe there was the doorknob to the room. The fact the door was locked, and it sounds like there's a child at the door. So I believed that the door to the bedroom was locked. One of the children had come upstairs and tried to get in and was jiggling the doorknob. So while at the residence, I conducted a recreation of that to essentially duplicate the sound.
And did you hear a sound that, to your ear, sounded familiar to that noise that you had heard on the recording?
Yes.
I want to go back to the timeline that's in evidence. So, based on the timeline that's in evidence, that you're able to kind of reconstruct from when the recording started, how long was the defendant inside the room with a deceased Ellie Shea before we hear the first word come out of his mouth?
50 seconds, 50.
And while inside that room, does he receive some sort of ping notification noise?
Yes.
And did his phone reveal that he actually turns the flashlight on some seconds before he calls 911?
Yes.
Does that recording continue until Sergeant Palmerloo enters the room as we previously discussed?
Yes.
At this time, the state was seeking evidence what has now been marked as state's E, Deputy Cavalcante's body camera footage, and F, Sergeant Palmerloo's body-worn camera footage.
Same caveat, Your Honor.
All right, they will be admitted as State's Exhibits 11 and 12, respectively.
Let me ask you a bit more plainly. Do you ever hear a gunshot at any point during that 54-minute and 17-second recording?
No gunshot is ever heard.
Do you hear any noise other than that AC unit from the moment that the defendant tells one of his children that Ellie is sleeping to when he returns back into the room?
No.
What does the defendant do while at Publix as it relates to setting up an appointment?
He sets up an appointment for marriage counseling.
While at Publix?
Yes.
And does he communicate that to Ellie?
Yes, he sends a calendar invite to her phone.
What's in evidence I will first admit what's been marked as State's A, which was previously identified as the November 4th, 2024 report.
Again, same caveat, Your Honor.
It will be admitted as the state's next numbered exhibit. 1, A is 1, yes.
Okay, it just wasn't, sorry.
A is 1, B is 2.
publishing what's in evidence as States 1. Detective Gilberti's investigative report. We're looking at page 24 of your report. At the top of that screenshot, can you describe for both the court and the record what was visible when you first laid eyes on the phone?
So this is the phone that was upside down on the bed. When it flipped over, it was open to the message thread with that same, with the audio recording in the send bar. At the top of the screen is a notification for a calendar invite for marriage counseling. It was scheduled to be on October 16th at 4 p.m.
And based off of the facts that you developed through your investigation, that counseling session would have been scheduled and sent to Ellie after she was killed?
Yes.
The first blue bubble that is pictured, could you read that blue bubble?
Just the Brussels. Tony, I can't do this anymore. Please understand it's too much what you did to me. I can't anymore. Take the girls for a drive. Give me space, please.
And is that the message that was sent just seconds before this recording begins on Ms. Shea's phone?
Yes.
And there's a reference in the timeline to 2 additional messages. So we'll go back to the timeline, which is in evidence as States 7. We see a reference to some communication that occurs upon his return. We see here at 2:09:24. Go back to States 1. We see the content of those messages that are referenced.
Yes.
Can you just read those in for the record?
We just left. The girls tried to come upstairs. You locked the door. I'm sorry about last night and what I said. I know this. I think the word at church yesterday was fitting. Whether we sell the house, don't sell, whatever you want, I will do. I love you. Get some sleep, my love. Want me to bring a guava con queso for dessert? And then the second message is, I'm downstairs. Our counseling is for this Wednesday at 1600. I sent you an invite. Let me know when you're awake. I will keep these chicks busy with popsicles, LOL.
Was an arrest warrant obtained for the defendant on October 18th, 2024?
Yes.
Where was he arrested?
He was arrested on Lake Underhill at the intersection of Econ Lockhatchee Trail.
Where was he at when he was?
Within Orange County. He was driving his Telluride, Kia Telluride SUV.
I'll return to publishing what's in evidence as States 6, the CSI photos. Subsequent to the defendant's arrest was another search warrant served on the Shea residence.
Yes.
And I'm pulling up a set of photos that is within the subfolder 10/18/2024. Are these some of the photos that were taken during that post-arrest search warrant?
Yes.
I need to clear something up. You had referred to ENF and admitted them as 11 and 12. They were previously admitted as 3 and 4. So I just need to make sure the record's clear.
Sorry about that. I think they hadn't been marked. My apologies, Your Honor.
So we're striking 11 and 12 because they already exist.
They already exist as 3 and 4. I thought I was going crazy, but I'm not.
I was with you.
You're right there with me.
I was. So.
Now, returning to our discussion of these photos, Where are we at and what is the court looking at?
So this is inside the Shea residence. We're looking at a chair with a backpack.
And the contents of that chair were searched, or the backpack on that chair were searched?
Yes.
And that's what's going on in the next photo in this exhibit?
Yes.
What are we looking at in photograph ending 639?
So there's prescription medication for Anthony Shea that was inside the backpack. There was a wallet containing his Florida driver's license, credit cards.
Additional medications in the backpack?
Additional medication.
Within one of the pockets of the backpack was opened, and what do we see here that's about to be pulled out?
His U.S. passport.
And was there an envelope next to the U.S. passport?
Yes. There's a bank envelope inside the bag also.
Photograph 3654, is that U.S. passport that was next to that bank envelope?
Yes.
And when that bank envelope...
Coming up, we're going to hear the cross-examination of the lead detective in an officer's affair murder trial. And next hour, we hear testimony from one of the victim's friends in the kiss and kill murder trial for Samantha Krebs. That's coming up next. Okay. Here at Court TV this morning, we have been turning to a brand new case. We've been following this one out of Florida. It's an officer's affair murder case for defendant Anthony Shea. He is a former sergeant who is charged with killing his wife, a lieutenant, and then trying to cover up the murder as a suicide. Victim Ellie Shea was found dead from a gunshot wound back in October of 2024. Both had worked for the sheriff's office, but Anthony resigned due to an internal affairs investigation. The investigation centered around an intimate relationship he had while on duty. Earlier this week, Anthony Shea had a bond hearing, and we got to hear from the lead investigator on that case. Now he's on cross-examination, being questioned about the defendant's timeline.
Going back then to the timeline for a moment and the information you got from the phone, we did something similar. You heard me ask you questions about what, if anything, you heard Miss Shea say after Mr. Shea said, "Bye, babe," and it was your testimony that you heard nothing?
Correct.
Okay. I note from the download that at 1:42:04 p.m., at that point, after Mr. Shea left, your theory of the case and based upon your investigation, where was the phone?
Ellie's phone?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It was still on the bed.
I'm sorry?
It was on the bed?
It was always on the bed, correct?
Correct.
And it's your understanding that whatever happened, that phone never left the house, correct?
Correct.
And seemingly, you don't have any evidence that it ever left the bedroom.
Correct.
Okay. There's a notation on the download from the phone that at 1:42:04 p.m., a notification was removed from the phone. Can you explain that?
Does it say what the notification was?
Do you know what this is not a challenge question. You know what we talk about when I say notification?
Yes.
It's a pop-up that shows up.
Yes.
You know the only ways that it can be removed?
I think that would be more of a technical question for the digital forensics, but.
Well, do you have any explanation for how a notification at 1:42, now let's just clear this up a little bit. Where do you believe Mr. Shea was at 1:42?
He would be on the trip to Publix.
Right, or at Publix, right?
At Publix.
Left the house about 1:32?
Right.
So at Publix, but certainly nowhere near the house, correct?
Correct.
And his phone, which was with him, documents that, correct?
Correct.
With that thought in mind, that Mr. Shea was not anywhere near the phone, do you have any explanation for how a notification at 1:42:04 p.m. was removed from her phone?
No.
Was there anybody else in the room besides her?
No.
Could it have been her who removed the notification?
I don't know the answer to that.
When did Mr. Shea get back to the residence?
It was 2:02 p.m.
About 2 p.m.?
Yes, just after 2.
My understanding from the download is that at 2:01, that he and the girls are getting out of the car. Does that help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
You had made some note in your timeline about up and down stairs. 12:50, Anthony Shea walks 3 flights of stairs.
Yes.
What is the relevance of that to you and your investigation such that it made it on to the 20 or so entries here?
So his phone tracks his activity. The relevance to this case would be that he would enter the house and go upstairs to the room where Ellie was found.
At 12:50? I'm sorry. Let's back up a little bit just so we don't get confused with timing, because I want to be clear with the timeline.
Okay.
My understanding is that at 1:50, we know that he is leaving the store at Publix.
Right.
Is that about right?
Yes.
That about 2 o'clock, he's back to the house.
Yes.
I'm just curious that about an hour before, it seems Mr. Shea's phone suggests he's walking 3 flights of stairs. And what's the relevance to your investigation?
That he was either going upstairs or downstairs from the bedroom.
Okay, but does that have any insight or relevance on the investigation of this case, that he went upstairs and downstairs?
It was more to demonstrate that his phone was tracking his activity throughout the house.
Oh, that was its only purpose?
Yes.
Also, at 1:20, you state he walks 1 flight of stairs, about a half hour later. Relevance?
Based on the phone download.
Right, it's an iPhone.
Yes.
It tracks us everywhere we go and everything we do, it seems, right? And does it tell you going up or going down?
No, it just says 3 flights of stairs or 1 flight of stairs.
Doesn't say who's holding the phone either, does it?
No.
Did you talk to Tony about the girls using his phone? Did you ask that question to address this issue?
No.
And then again, there's another mention at 2:11, and let's just keep the 2:11 context in mind. 2:11 is right at about the same time that Mr. Shea and the girls get back home. Does it sound about right? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'm just looking at your timeline.
Right, that would be, if he got back at 2:01, 2:11 would be when he went upstairs to, as he stated, discover Ellie.
Okay. So,
Because the 911 call came in at 2:12.
right, so
2:11 would be him going up to the room, ultimately discovering her.
in line with what he said he did, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's relevant to the fact that Mr. Shea was speaking the truth when he said, I got home, I went upstairs, and I found her.
Objection, proper characterization.
I'm sorry, I said speak the truth. Mr. Shea told you that he had gone upstairs, and that's when he found Ms. Shea.
It's consistent with his statement, yes.
Okay. And again, as you just said, about that very minute, he called 911.
Yes, at 2:12, yes.
At 2:04:06, another notification was removed from Ms. Shea's phone. Can you explain that?
I'm going to object to facts, not in evidence, Your Honor. This is not in a report it's been introduced. I don't know where it's being drawn from. The court doesn't have this before either itself or the witness.
Well, the witness may know or not know whether a notification was removed.
And I can lay a foundation that he has testified and actually created an exhibit for this court to consider based upon his review of the source documents, which are the 2 Cellbrite downloads of the phones. And I'm questioning about entries on those Cellbrite downloads.
If I may, Your Honor, the issue is that these are reports that are sometimes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines, and to just ask about something like that in the abstract without actually being in evidence, I think is depriving both the state, the court, and the witness from actually being able to understand what is being questioned.
I'm going to overrule the objection. If he doesn't know or needs to see the document, he'll say so.
Yes, Your Honor.
So there are 2 premises here that we're trying to work through, correct? One is that it is your belief that Mr. Shea intentionally and with malice aforethought caused the death of his wife, correct?
Yes.
Or she committed suicide. You know that to be the other track of the facts of this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Within that context, would you consider it relevant whether or not there are actions or activities on that phone while it was with Ms. Shea and Ms. Shea alone?
I think with a review of the extraction, it may explain why the notification was removed.
Did you understand my question? My question was, would it be relevant to this investigation to look into the issue of whether or not notifications may have been removed from a phone when they were only with Ms. Shea?
Yes.
Okay. And would it be similarly relevant to the investigation and potentially what path we're going down, is whether or not those notifications were caused by a person still alive in that room with that phone?
Yes.
All right, coming up, we're going to hear more of that cross-examination of the lead detective in an officer's affair murder trial. And next hour, we hear testimony from one of the defendant's friends in the kiss and kill murder trial for Samantha Krebs. Stay with us. You're watching Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.
The WNBA is on Ion. The Sky travel to Windy to clash against the Fever. Then the Liberty go coast to coast to take on the Storm. Coverage begins tonight at 7. Find Ion wherever you watch. Ion, it's on.
Tonight, we're live from Denver for CrimeCon 2025. See what special guests join us at the world's biggest true crime event. Closing arguments, live from CrimeCon. Tonight, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Back to Orange County, Florida. A former sheriff's deputy is seeking bond. Anthony Shea is accused of killing his wife, who was also an Orange County sheriff's deputy. Lieutenant Ellie Shea was found dead inside the master bedroom of their Orlando home. This was last year. Anthony Shea is also accused of using his wife's cell phone to create an alibi and staging the scene as a suicide. Let's go back inside the courtroom now. The lead detective is on cross-examination.
There was a photograph that was taken out of the Nest Cam of Mr. Shea taking the children next door. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Of what relevance do you assign to that?
It documents that he took the children next door, and at that time, there is silence again in the bedroom on the audio recording. So it confirms he left the residence, and the reason for it, silence on the, or inactivity on the audio recording.
Okay. Any other relevance or investigative insight other than the fact that we can see he left the residence he said he left?
It shows that there was a break in CPR.
Okay, because he went to get his children out of the residence. I think he even said to you in one of the interviews that the girls had come up to the door and he wanted to get them out.
Yes.
Now he's got a mom, a wife, either having passed or passing away potentially, and he wants his girls out of there.
Yes.
And do you then blame some way, find that to be evidence of bad behavior by Mr. Shea that should be considered?
It corroborates his account,
That he left,
that he left and brought the kids next door.
and that there was a break in the CPR?
Yes.
Nothing else? It's your investigation. Anything else?
No.
I know, as we testified to before lunch, that you are of the belief or position that Mr. Shea is guilty of first-degree murder.
Objection, relevance.
There was premise question. What's the challenging with it?
Overruled.
Is there any forensic evidence, any evidence that we can look to and say, here's how I know he did it, because of this piece of evidence that cannot be explained away in the entirety of your investigation to date? And by the way, that investigation has included how many subpoenas to third-party record providers?
Numerous.
Dozens and dozens, right?
Yes.
Banks,
Banks.
credit cards. You just have to say yes, so she
Yes.
gets it. And cell phones, of course.
Yes.
Websites,
Yes.
Facebook, LinkedIn, a whole slew of them, right?
Yes.
Right? I'm just curious if there's any that you have not yet done in your investigation to try and prove Mr. Shea's guilt. Any record repository that's out there that you haven't tried to get to yet?
No.
And having reviewed, you've gotten all those reports and results already, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've had this case for over a year, close.
Since October 14th of
Sorry.
2024.
With all of that you have gathered, is there a piece of forensic evidence that you can present that, conclusively says this is why it's first-degree murder?
Based on his sending the text messages and appearing to plan.
Right, your theory
Yes.
is that he planned, and in doing the planning, that he would,
covering up.
I don't want to talk over you,
Okay.
that he would plan it so for example, the marriage counseling text, you perceive that to be completely made up, right?
Correct.
And postured to show that he had not already killed his wife.
Correct.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and bring in criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer to discuss what we've been listening to so far. Josh, defense counsel up there, this is the cross-examination, kind of going through things and picking up on things like the notifications. How were they removed? So a good defense counsel always likes to take something, especially maybe something that was overlooked, something small, and make it a really big deal. And that's what he's trying to do there.
Yeah, and this is where the yeoman's work of criminal defense really happens. It's not necessarily at the final trial. Think about how early we are in this process. This is a bond discussion. Does anybody really think that bond's going to be granted? No, there's not really a big substantive belief that, hey, this is a great, but, that's the theoretical subject of why everybody's present. But really what's happening is the formation of the state's case and the establishment of how the defense is going to defend the allegations. This is sworn testimony. These are the investigators. It's still relatively early in the lifespan and evolution of a criminal prosecution when we're at a hearing like this, certainly within the first 10, 20, 30% of the life of the case. And so what's happening here is the establishment of the baselines. These issues and items and incidents just occurred, so people's memories are fresh. People aren't going to have to go back and, this was back in 2017, so let me go check. No, this is where those records are made, and it's a very important opportunity for the state to establish firmly without question, without ambiguity, this is exactly what your testimony is today. This is what you observed. Thank you so much, investigator. In case you aren't available later on in the future, let's obtain and secure this testimony now, early in the process, even though we're ostensibly here for bond. And at the same time, the defense is getting and doing the same thing, establishing facts for future impeachment. And that's how this work's really done.
Yeah, really good. And hearing just the timeline, obviously timelines, they are so important in cases, and really laying out every single movement that he made. Defense counsel did bring up, Josh, though, the children could have used the phone, but I'm not going to ask you about that yet. I know you're sticking around next hour, so we'll see you soon.